and I'm concerned that it might lead to the loss of life.
Sandy is striking right in the heart of our nation. New York City, home to more than 8 million people, shutting down the world's biggest subway system, which is reportedly flooding somewhat tonight. And bridges and tunnels on and off Manhattan Island, they're shut down. We just got a tweet that there was up to 4 feet of seawater entering subway tunnels under the East River. There are mandatory evacuations up and down the East Coast, but there are people being rescued from their homes as we speak, and even more people doing their best to stay safe and ride out this storm. Straight out to HLN anchor Mike Galanos in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Mike, you have been there all day weathering this. You're holding up. A lot of people say, of all the states affected, New Jersey is getting the worst of it. What's happening now?
Jane, and right here in Atlantic City, we're still getting punched in the mouth. I mean, Jane, you see where I am now? Look at the water above my knee. When you and I talked earlier in the day, my feet were practically dry here. That's what happens when all this comes together. High tide, storm surge from this superstorm, and also these winds that are gusting as high as ever, probably 90 miles an hour. So, Jane, it is tough. That's why officials said, get out, evacuate. You do not want to be around in this stuff. And the only people out, there's a car, that's emergency vehicles, making sure everybody's safe and everybody's off the roads. But, Jane, it is just brutal out here.
Well, I want to ask you this, Mike. Some people, I think, and I myself have kind of confused the storm surge with rain. And talking to experts, they say just because it may have stopped raining in places doesn't mean that the storm surge, in other words, the water from the ocean, isn't continuing to pose an increasing threat. What can you tell us about that on the ground?
Jane, I fell into that same lull. There was a moment where the eye had passed, and then the eye's over you, basically, and you get this little bit of a lull. But as that was happening, the silent destructor, the water, that storm surge of water, with the wind, was being pushed onto shore, and that's why I'm sitting in knee-deep water right now. And then after that, another round came, and that's what you're seeing now. More wind, more rain, and we're getting smacked all over again.
Oh, boy, and the numbers are staggering. Power outages sweeping the East Coast tonight as Hurricane Sandy makes landfall. Electric companies estimate almost 3 million people, 2.8 million people in at least 11 states are without power right now. That number expected to increase dramatically as the storm moves across the East Coast. At least 6 deaths reported in the United States, some from falling trees, certainly a reason to stay indoors. The worldwide death toll, more than 60 at this point. Now, I want to go to Barb Hass. You've been writing out this storm in Glen Ridge, New Jersey. Again, it seems like New Jersey, of all the states on the eastern seaboard, is getting the worst of it. What can you tell us from where you are, Barb?
Well, I'm in Glen Ridge, New Jersey, as you just said. And for any viewers not aware of this, we're only 12 miles outside of Manhattan. So for Glen Ridge itself, in the past hour to 2 hours, we've had intermittent power outages. It comes on, it goes off, it comes on, it goes off. We have lost, we personally, in part of our home, we have lost cable connection. Another part, we have it. The thing that I would tell you when I was speaking with your CNN colleague out in California, Mara Raphael, a few hours ago, and at that time I said, goodness, there's not too much going on here. I think it's more along the coast. Things have certainly changed in the last 3 or 4 hours. The rain has intensified. I think it's just begun to slow down a bit, but the wind, both the sound of the wind, which is deafening, and the force of it is absolutely frightening at this point. And again, compared to what I was able to watch on television, it's much worse in other areas. But being 12 miles outside of Manhattan, we are still very much feeling the force of these winds.
Well, Barb, I have to agree with you entirely, is that I went outside actually to help my mother, who was evacuated from Midtown Manhattan, and you do not get a sense by watching the videotape of the intensity of it, because you can't really see wind unless it's rattling something. But, I mean, the wind is enough to knock you off your feet. Even when it's not raining, it is still incredibly powerful. I want to go to Tom Sater, meteorologist out of Atlanta. Now, here's the thing. We had been hearing 90-mile-an-hour winds offshore. When it hit, I understand, according to published reports, it was 80 miles an hour. Explain the significance of that and the potential for damage.
Well, now that the center of Sandy, what was a tropical system, has made landfall, all this focus on the center, of course, is just from past history. When we talk about hurricanes, we always want to know about landfall. But what is different here, Jane, is this storm has morphed. It's a hybrid storm now. It's a nor'easter. It's a winter storm altogether. If I show you this radar, let's take this full. You can see the circulation with this. Now, the center of the storm now looks like it's just about over Philadelphia, but I wanted you to look at New York. Look at Long Island and notice the angle of the shoreline. Notice the rain coming in from the southeast, so it's almost hitting perpendicular. Now, it's not the rain causing the storm surge, but those same winds are pushing this water into New York. Now, as far as the winds we were talking about, we have hurricane force winds. That's anything over 74 miles per hour and greater all over Long Island in metropolitan New York. It stretches from D.C. all the way up into this area, but we've had wind gusts at 91, 94 miles per hour. The storm surge now, all-time record at Battery Park. The benchmark was 10.5 feet. That was in 1938. Well, we now officially have a 13.4 level.
And that is why we're getting reports from @MTA Insider, Metropolitan Transportation Authority, that up to 4 feet of seawater is entering the world's largest subway system, which is exactly why the mayor of New York shut the subways down at 7 o'clock last night, because had those trains been on the tracks underground at the time that seawater hit, it would have crippled all those subway trains, and we'd be in big problems. More on the other side.
At Honda,